It was 6:02 p.m. when I got the text. Traffic's crazy. I'll be home soon. Red heart. It looked normal, casual, affectionate, routine. But I stared at it longer than usual. Maybe it was the heart emoji. She didn't use them often anymore. It felt inserted, like punctuation after a lie. I read it again, then once more, and the silence in the hallway pressed in on me. I wasn't supposed to be home. She didn't know. I had left work early without saying anything. No grand reason. No emergency. Just a feeling. A twitch in my gut that wouldn't leave me alone since lunch. The kind of intuition you talk yourself out of on normal days. But this one wasn't normal. Not after the way she looked at her phone that morning at breakfast. Not after she left the room to take a call and came back with her voice softer than it had been in weeks. I pulled into our driveway at 5:43 p.m. And everything looked exactly as it should have. Porch light on. Her car out front. Curtains drawn halfway like she always did around sunset. I sat there for a minute in my car, engine off, keys still in the ignition, listening to nothing. Trying to feel out if this was just me being paranoid. I wish it had been. When I stepped inside, I called out her name like usual, just to see what would happen. No answer. The house smelled faintly like coffee and citrus cleaner. Something she probably spritzed around to keep the gallery energy out of her workspace. The scent of calm control. I walked slowly, careful with my footsteps like I didn't belong there, even though I did. I was the husband, the one who paid the mortgage, who hung the damn string lights over the back patio just because she said it would feel more like Barcelona. But that night something shifted. I walked down the hallway toward her home office. Door cracked, just barely. Enough to give me the option to look or not. I wish I hadn't looked, but of course I did. And that's when I saw it. She was sitting on someone's lap. At first, I thought maybe my mind was distorting it. Some trick of the angle, a shadow. But no, there she was. Her legs casually draped over him like it was the most natural thing in the world. His arms wrapped around her waist. Her fingers toying with the top button of her own blouse, which was undone halfway. Her head tilted back in laughter. Loose strands of hair falling around her face like they used to after we'd been tangled in bed on a Saturday morning. She looked happy, not guilty, not stressed, not like someone caught in a moment she didn't want to be in. Just happy. I didn't recognize the guy at first. He had a full beard and wore a black button-up. Young, casual, too relaxed to be there for work. I didn't know his name yet, but I'd remember the way he looked at her, like he already knew how far he could go, like he had gone that far before. He saw me first. His eyes widened, and for a second, he froze like a deer. Jenna hadn't noticed yet. Still laughing, still oblivious to the man watching her from the hallway. The man she'd promised a life to. It was the longest 5 seconds of my life. And then, like a coward, I stepped back into the hallway, into the shadows. I didn't say a word, didn't burst in, didn't demand an explanation or start yelling like you see in movies. I just disappeared from their line of sight. 2 minutes later, I walked back outside, grabbed the mail from the box like I had just pulled up, then walked in again and slammed the front door loud enough to shake the frames on the wall. That part was intentional. I wanted her to hear it. Wanted to give her a script to follow, an excuse, a moment to collect herself, adjust her blouse, fix her hair, and pretend everything was okay. And she did exactly that. Seconds later, Jenna came out of the office, looking flushed but composed. "Oh, hey!" she called out like she just remembered I existed. "You're home early?" I looked at her like I was seeing her for the first time. She smiled a little too big, then added, "I've been working on the gallery catalog all afternoon. Got overwhelmed and asked one of the design assistants to help me sort the print proofs and shipment schedules. You know how behind we are this quarter." Her voice had a performance quality to it. Just enough inflection to sound rehearsed, but not suspicious. Unless you knew what she looked like when she was genuinely caught off guard. I knew. She gestured vaguely toward the back hallway. He just left. Out the back door. Right. The back door. Of course. I nodded. said nothing. Jenna walked up and kissed me on the cheek. Her lips were still warm, still soft, still familiar. But the moment they touched my skin, I felt cold. Not angry, not even sad, just cold. Like I'd left myself standing in that hallway and was only now walking back into my own body. She pulled away and asked, "You okay? You're quiet." I nodded again. "Just tired." She smiled and took my coat like nothing had happened. And maybe for her, nothing had. Maybe she'd convinced herself long ago that what she was doing wasn't wrong. That it was emotional support, work pressure, a temporary comfort, passing thing. But I had seen her face when she laughed. The way she tilted her head. The comfort in her shoulders. That wasn't new. That wasn't casual. It was mate. Intentional. And it wasn't the first time. That night she made pasta. Played the "everything is fine" role beautifully. Talked about a shipment delay and how one of the gallery interns lost a drive with new client mock-ups. Said she might need to fly to Chicago in 2 weeks for a potential install. I asked no questions. I didn't want her to know how much I already knew. Not yet. But as she spoke, I replayed the scene from earlier over and over in my mind. The sound of her laugh. The way he touched her waist like it belonged to him. The slow blink of her eyes when she leaned in. I'd seen all I needed to see. I didn't need a confession. What I needed was confirmation. That night, I pretended to fall asleep next to her. Her body was warm beside mine, but she didn't lean in like she used to, didn't reach out, just stared at her phone screen under the blanket. Brightness dimmed, fingers moving, probably texting him. I watched the shadows on the ceiling and waited for the buzz of her screen to stop. At 12:37 a.m. It did. And I knew. This didn't start today. It didn't even start last week. This was a pattern. And like all patterns, it left marks. Little ones. Tiny cracks in a wall that had once felt solid. So I lay there, eyes open, unmoving, and made myself a quiet promise. She wanted to play a role? Fine. Play mine better. Because now I wasn't guessing. Now I knew. After that night, everything I thought I knew about my marriage changed. But the part that hit me hardest wasn't what I saw. It was how fast my mind started pulling apart the past. Because once the lie cracks, every memory shifts with it. And that's when the pattern started to reveal itself. I thought back to the first moment something felt off 3, maybe 4 months earlier. Jenna had started leaving her phone in odd places. First, I barely noticed. But slowly, she stopped charging it in the kitchen like she always had. Instead, it lived in the bathroom on silent. Face down. Always locked. I remember joking about it. "What? You texting the FBI?" She laughed. "No," she said. "Just sick of being glued to it. Trying to create boundaries." It sounded noble. Intentional. Smart even. But it was also a lie. Then came the weekends. Jenna used to treasure Saturday mornings. Pancakes. Vinyl records playing in the kitchen. She'd wear one of my old sweatshirts and dance barefoot while the coffee brewed. But those mornings stopped happening. Suddenly, she had plans every Saturday. Girls' Day, she'd call it. At first, I didn't question it. I respected her space. Figured maybe she just needed time for herself. God knows everyone does. But it wasn't just that. It was how specific and evasive she became at the same time. She'd leave the house looking like she was headed to a fashion shoot. Hair curled, nails fresh, lashes done, makeup far heavier than she ever wore for brunch with friends. And the scent, she wore a new perfume. Musky, deeper, darker than anything she'd ever worn around me. Not floral like her usual bottle. This one had weight, memory, intention. I once asked her about it. She blinked, then waved it off like I'd asked about the weather. "Oh, that? A free sample from work. I think it's a bit much, honestly." But she kept wearing it. Every Saturday. The cracks kept growing. She used to roll her eyes at people who put their phones on do not disturb mode. Called them paranoid. But then she started using it religiously midday, even during lunch at home. She'd claim she needed peace from notifications, but it wasn't peace she was chasing. It was privacy. Or maybe secrecy. Whatever it was, she was building a wall between us, one feature setting at a time. Then came the trainings. A string of new professional development programs, gallery meetings, client mixers, and design seminars. She became incredibly busy, booked 2-3 nights a week. I admired her hustle, until I noticed she never seemed stressed about it. She never complained about the workload, never recapped a single detail of the meetings unless I asked. And when I did ask, the answers were vague. A lot of "it was fine," or "it ran long," or "you wouldn't know them." One night, I looked up one of the gallery events she claimed she'd attended. It was real, just not scheduled on the night, she said. When I brought it up, she didn't flinch, just shrugged and said the dates must have changed. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't unsee the subtle shift in her eyes when she said it. That tiny pause before she responded. The soft recalibration of her tone, sweet but distant, like someone running a script they've rehearsed in front of a mirror. Then came the pictures. Jenna's gallery started posting more behind-the-scenes content. Photos from events, meetups, design reveals. She was in a few, smiling, holding wine glasses, gesturing at canvases like a curator. But in all the sh*ts, every single one, there was one man always nearby. Same guy every time. He wasn't always next to her, but close enough to feel like a shadow. He had that familiar look, relaxed posture, close-cut beard, dark eyes, and the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're somewhere you shouldn't be, but nobody's going to stop you. I asked her once who he was. She looked up from her phone like I'd interrupted something. "Oh, him? That's just Leo, design assistant. He works on the layouts for the installs." "Design assistant," I repeated. "Yeah, kind of intense but super talented." Then she changed the subject almost too quickly. That name stuck with me. Leo. I don't know why, but even the way she said it sounded too familiar. Not affectionate exactly, but not neutral either. There was something weighted in it, like a thread she didn't want pulled. And I started seeing more of those threads. One afternoon, I was cleaning the kitchen and noticed a wine glass in the sink. Nothing unusual, except for the lipstick stain on the rim. Bright red. Not her color. She hadn't worn anything that bold in months. At least not around me. Later that day, I walked past her studio and glanced at her desk. There was a photo propped on her bulletin board. A candid sh*t of her laughing during a gallery opening. In the frame's corner was her hand, lifted mid-gesture. What caught me wasn't her smile. It was the ring on her finger. Not her wedding ring. Not any ring I'd ever seen before. It was thick, silver, set with a small stone. Not her style at all. I stared at it for a long time. Later, I went back and checked, quietly, carefully, but the ring wasn't in her jewelry box. It wasn't anywhere in the house. At least not where I was allowed to look. And still, I said nothing. Why? Because I was waiting for the moment I couldn't deny. I needed something undeniable. The human mind is capable of great self-deception. I'd learned that firsthand. You'll ignore what's in front of you just to protect a version of the person you love that only exists in memory. So I played along. Let her keep up the act. She'd come home late, smelling like foreign cologne and candle smoke. Say things like, "We stayed after to talk about layout lighting," or, "Leo and I had to finish the display mock-ups. Client's deadline moved up." I never pushed, never accused, just logged it. Every story went into a mental file. Every excuse, every detail. Times, places, outfits. I became an expert in silence. It was the only way I could prepare myself for the moment when I'd need all of it. The data, the timeline, the truth. Then one night I caught her humming. Just a random tune, something unfamiliar. She used to hum when she was happy. That night, she did it while brushing her hair in the bathroom. She looked peaceful, like she was somewhere else in her mind. I stood outside the door, watching the outline of her reflection through the frosted glass. And I realized something awful. She wasn't hiding pain. She was glowing. There's a specific kind of heartbreak that comes from realizing someone didn't fall out of love with you. They fell in love with someone else. That's what I was dealing with. She wasn't cheating because she was confused or broken. She was cheating because she had already moved on. I just hadn't been told yet. So I did what any sane person would do when they're being gaslit by someone they once trusted with their whole life. I started writing it down. Every time something felt off, I logged it in a notebook I kept in the garage behind an old box of car manuals. Call times. Her exact words. Even the timestamps of her do not disturb patterns. I took **TS, printed photos, traced back events. Not because I needed evidence for anyone else, but because I needed clarity for myself. I was tired of doubting my own eyes. I started to see the shape of her departure. Not a sudden disappearance. Not a clean break. Just erosion. Jenna hadn't left me. She had been leaving piece by piece for months. And the worst part? She still kissed me goodnight. A week after I started writing things down, Jenna told me she had a seminar in a neighboring city, 2 hours north, just far enough that she'd have to stay overnight. She said it casually over dinner like it was nothing, like it hadn't been perfectly timed right after a week of late nights, long silences, and one evening where she said her phone battery had died but her Instagram story had posted just fine. I didn't even ask what the seminar was about. I just nodded and asked if she wanted help packing. She smiled, said no, she had it covered. Of course she did. She left on a Thursday morning. Wore a cream blouse and tailored black pants, the kind she normally reserved for gallery showings or interviews. As she backed out of the driveway, I waved from the porch, coffee in hand, face calm. She thought I was still asleep when she left the bedroom, but I'd been lying there for 20 minutes, already dressed, watching her reflection move across the mirror as she got ready. I waited exactly 15 minutes after she drove off. Then I grabbed my jacket, wallet, and a key fob I hadn't used in 2 years. Jenna didn't know I had reactivated the old car tracker. Not on her main vehicle, but the spare. The one she used when she didn't want to draw attention. The silver hatchback we'd kept for low-key errands. The one she drove that morning. The app lit up on my phone the moment I stepped outside. She was already 20 miles away, heading north, just like she said. But she didn't take the route to the downtown conference center. She veered off the highway and onto a scenic parkway that curved alongside the river. It was a beautiful drive, quiet, serene. Not the kind of route you took when you were running late for a networking seminar. I followed her from a careful distance. Rented a car the night before under my brother's name, just in case. Tinted windows, neutral color, nothing flashy. I stayed 3 to 5 car lengths behind most of the time, backing off when traffic got light. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life unravel from a distance. Around 9:15 a.m., she pulled into the valet of a boutique hotel with tall glass windows and modern art sculptures flanking the entrance. The kind of place that marketed itself as urban tranquility. Rooms with private terraces, adult-only floors, complimentary champagne at check-in. I didn't pull in after her. I circled the block twice, then parked at a lot across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, he showed up. The man from her office. Leo. I'd never spoken to him, but I knew his face now the way you know a recurring nightmare. Same jacket from the gallery photo. Same confident gait. He walked up to the lobby entrance like he'd done it before. Like he wasn't afraid of being seen. And maybe he wasn't. Maybe he assumed I'd never looked this closely. Maybe he thought I was still the guy Jenna had trained me to be. Trusting, passive, busy. But not today. I watched as the glass doors opened. Jenna was inside, standing just past the reception desk, holding a phone in one hand, the other brushing her hair behind her ear. She looked relaxed, not anxious, not hiding. When she saw him, she smiled. Not politely, not professionally. She smiled like someone who'd been waiting for this moment. Like someone stepping into a version of her life where she got to be adored without the weight of guilt. He kissed her on the cheek. She didn't flinch. They went up together. I didn't need to know what happened next. I already did. I sat in the car, still as stone, trying to reconcile what I had seen with who I thought she was. The image of her laughing in that hallway a week ago had been burned into me. But this was confirmation. The look in her eyes. The way she tilted toward him instinctively. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. I waited. An hour later, they stepped out onto a terrace on the 3rd floor, wine glasses in hand. Middle of the day. Sun high. She leaned into him while he spoke, and I watched as he reached up and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. Then he kissed her. Not on the lips, on the temple. Something about that made it worse. More int asterisk mate. More real. She closed her eyes when he did it. Let herself melt into it. Then she laughed. That same damn laugh. The one that used to belong to me. And that's when I took the photo. It wasn't spite. Or rage. It was just proof. Proof that I wasn't imagining things. That my gut hadn't betrayed me. That my silence hadn't made me crazy. Just one photo. The two of them. Her head on his shoulder. His hand wrapped around hers on the railing. Smiling like they were on vacation. Like this was their life. I didn't stay much longer. I drove back. Slow and methodical, stopping once for gas. Once for coffee I didn't drink. I kept checking my phone even though I knew she wouldn't message me. She had no reason to. In her mind I was at work. Oblivious. Predictable. When I got home, I opened my laptop and uploaded the photo. Saved it in a folder with a neutral name, Documents 2020, and then backed it up to a drive I kept hidden in a shoebox beneath the guest room bed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there watching the screen, staring at the frame. Jenna and Leo. Afternoon light. Wine glasses reflecting the sun. Her blouse slightly wrinkled. His thumb grazing her knuckle. I zoomed in. Not to torture myself, but to study, to understand. Because that photo wasn't just evidence of infidelity. It was a portrait of someone I didn't recognize anymore. She looked so free, like a weight had been lifted off her chest. And maybe it had. Maybe I was that weight. The thought sat in my stomach like wet concrete. That night, she called around 6:30. Said the first day of the seminar had been dense but exciting. Something about a keynote speaker from Berlin. Told me the hotel room had a great view and that she was thinking about grabbing room service. Wish you were here, she said. She was good. Almost perfect. I told her to enjoy herself and get some rest. She said, "Love you." Out of habit. I waited 2 seconds, then said it back. Then I hung up. I sat in the kitchen for a long time afterward. Lights off. The buzz of the fridge the only sound. I looked around the room, the stove where she used to make her late-night cookies. The smudged corner of the microwave from where she tapped it with her ring finger. The notes she left stuck to the fridge with little magnets. Grocery reminders. Buy more oat milk. Don't forget the cat litter. Movie night Friday. All of it suddenly felt staged. Like props from a play that had ended weeks ago, but no one told me I was still in the audience. That night I didn't sleep in our bed. Couldn't. I laid on the couch, her throw blanket pulled over me, the photo still open on my phone. And I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit. She wasn't coming back. Not emotionally. Not mentally. Maybe not even physically. Whatever version of her had been mine was already gone. Replaced by someone who smiled differently when she wasn't being watched. Someone who let herself fall into another man's rhythm. Someone who lied through her teeth and still kissed me goodbye. And yet, I didn't hate her. That was the strangest part. I didn't even feel rage. Just a cold, hollow ache. The grief of knowing that what we'd built, the ordinary, quiet life, the shared toothbrush holder, the sock drawer full of mismatched pairs, weighed less to her than an afternoon on a balcony with a man who knew how to make her laugh like that. And in that moment, staring at that single frame, I understood something. She'd already said goodbye. She just hadn't told me yet. The morning after she got back from her seminar, she woke me with a kiss on the forehead. "Morning, sleepyhead," she whispered. "I brought coffee." I opened my eyes slowly, letting the light from the window wash over the room. The smell of fresh espresso was oddly sweet. Too sweet, actually. She had added vanilla syrup, something she knew I didn't like. A small detail, a small mistake. But that's the thing about people who lie, they forget the details that matter. "Thanks," I mumbled. She looked well-rested, energized even. Her hair had that post-hotel softness to it, freshly blown out with a loose curl. She wore a cozy off-shoulder sweater that she only broke out when she was feeling flirty or performative. I took the coffee and sat up slowly. She sat down beside me on the bed like we were back in year 2, before things got complicated. "You wouldn't believe how bad the projector situation was," she began, eyes wide. "It took 3 tech guys to fix it. We barely started the presentation on time." I nodded. She launched into a story about a speaker from Sweden who got stuck in customs, then about how the catering was late, then something about power outages and how Leo saved the day by improvising on the fly. I froze at the name. She didn't notice. She said it so naturally, so effortlessly, that it almost slipped past me. Almost. I waited for her to realize what she'd done. Waited for her to glance up and backtrack, to correct herself, to qualify it with a quick, "Oh, he's the guy from work," or, "You remember him, right?" But she didn't. Instead, she leaned in and asked, "So, what did you get up to while I was gone?" I shrugged. "Nothing much. Cleaned. Got caught up on a few things." She smiled and brushed a hand against my arm. "You're the best." And then she got up and headed to the kitchen. The moment she left the room, I exhaled for the first time all morning. The house was spotless. And I mean spotless. Not just cleaned, curated. The bathroom sparkled. New candles sat in the living room, lit and fragrant. Something citrusy, bright, intrusive. There were fresh flowers in the hallway, placed carefully in a glass vase I hadn't seen in over a year. She baked too. I could smell the rolls in the oven, ones she'd prepped from scratch, her signature ones with rosemary and sea salt that she only ever made on anniversaries or when we had guests. Except we weren't celebrating anything. And there were no guests, just us. And this performance. She'd staged it all. The house, the breakfast, the coffee, the illusion of warmth. Everything was arranged not to soothe me, but to control the narrative. That's when I knew she knew. She didn't know exactly what I had seen. She didn't know about the photo, the tracker, or the balcony kiss. But she knew something had shifted. Maybe she sensed it in how quiet I'd been on her trip. Maybe she caught it in my eyes when she kissed me hello the night she got back and I didn't kiss her the same. Either way, this wasn't reconciliation. It was recovery. A campaign to pull me back in before I walked too far out. And it was impressive, really. The subtleties, the pacing, the blend of guilt and affection. That night, she made pasta from scratch, poured my favorite wine, put on a playlist we used to fall asleep to. The food tasted fine, but the flavors felt like echoes, familiar, but not real. We sat across from each other, her foot brushing mine under the table. She told more stories about the trip, about the view from her room, about a guy who spilled espresso on his notes, about how badly she missed me while she was gone. I just listened. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. I already knew the answers. She reached for my hand after dinner, held it like she used to. "Let's do something together this weekend," she said. "Just you and me. No work. No distractions." I looked into her eyes, and for a split second, I saw it. The flicker, the calculation. She wasn't doing this out of regret. She was doing it because she thought she had to. Because she thought I might be slipping away. Because somewhere, deep in her gut, she sensed the clock was ticking. But what she didn't know was that it had already run out. After she went to bed, I stayed downstairs, cleaned up the plates, dried the glasses, opened my phone. I pulled up the photo again. I stared at it for a long time, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to burn it into my memory. I didn't want to forget. Not the image, not the way it made me feel. I didn't want time to dull it. I wanted it sharp. I wanted to remember what truth looked like when it stood on a terrace and laughed with someone else. I saved the image under a new folder, encrypted it, backed it up twice. Then I opened the notebook, the one I kept in the garage. I flipped to the last entry, and I wrote, "She's trying to reel me back. Smile first, details next. Soft voice, flavored coffee, fabricated nostalgia. The house smells like lemons and bread. Everything is too clean. She knows I know. But she's not ready to admit it. Not yet. She still thinks she can win. Then I closed the notebook and went to bed. She shifted as I got in, half asleep. "You okay?" she murmured. "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking." She reached for me in the dark, pulled herself close, her body warm, familiar, and utterly foreign. That night I didn't sleep, not because I was hurt, because I was done. The next morning she made pancakes. Not just any pancakes, banana walnut, my favorite. The kind she used to make on cold Sundays. She placed the plate down with a proud little smile and a fresh cup of coffee. This time without syrup. "I forgot the vanilla yesterday," she said, sitting across from me. "You like it plain, right?" I nodded. "Yeah." She waited for me to take a bite. I did. Tasted fine. But it didn't matter. We sat in silence while the morning sun spilled across the table. She tapped her spoon against the mug. I watched the trees outside sway with the wind. Then she spoke. "I've been thinking," she said. "We should go somewhere soon. Get away. Clear our heads." "Sure," I said. "Where would we go?" "Somewhere quiet. No phones. No distractions. Just you and me. Like before." I nodded again. Sounds good. But it didn't sound good. It sounded like a woman trying to erase a crime scene by repainting the walls. I finished my coffee, stood, kissed her on the forehead. She smiled and turned back to her plate. I walked upstairs, pulled a bag from the closet, and started packing. Not much. Just what I needed. Because I wasn't going somewhere with her. I was going somewhere without her. Later that afternoon, she was in the shower when I zipped the bag shut. She always took long showers on Fridays. Played music. Sang softly like she did when we first moved in. I listened to her voice drifting through the floorboards as I walked down the stairs, bag in hand. When I reached the front door, I hesitated, looked back once. At the house. At the illusion. At the final act of a very well-rehearsed play. Then I stepped outside and closed the door. Not hard. Not soft. Just enough to let her wonder what kind of sound it really was. I didn't leave a note. No dramatic exit. No accusations. No final words scrawled in frustration across a torn envelope. Just packed a bag and left. Quiet. Deliberate. A clean break that would confuse her more than any confrontation ever could. That was the point. I didn't want closure from her. I wanted distance. I rented a small house in a nearby town, one of those Airbnb listings with vague photos and too many exclamation marks in the description. But it was clean and it was empty. No wedding photos on the walls. No reminders of what used to be. No scent of her in the furniture. No trace of her voice echoing off the tiles. Just silence. God, the silence was beautiful. I didn't sleep the first night. Not because I was upset, but because my mind was too clear. Not numb, not spiraling, just present. I lay in bed listening to the hum of the fridge in the kitchen and realized it had been months, maybe longer, since I felt this still. It wasn't loneliness. It was peace. The next morning, I opened the windows and let the cold air in. I made a pot of coffee, sat at the small table by the window, and stared out at nothing in particular. Then I pulled out the notebook. The same one I started weeks ago. The one filled with red flags I hadn't wanted to name at the time. I opened it to a fresh page and wrote at the top, the pattern in full. Then I started listing everything I knew. Every late-night return. Every out-of-place detail. Every shift in her habits. Every lie. Every omission. Every "you're overthinking it." Every moment she didn't realize I was watching. I wrote down dates, cross-referenced them with calendar invites, gallery events, emails she forwarded to me when she still felt the need to pretend. I noted the timestamps of calls she missed and the times she suddenly became unreachable during business trips. I pulled up the photo again, not because I needed more pain but because I needed accuracy. Leo's hand, her posture, the wine glasses, the hotel name in the corner of the terrace window, barely visible but present if you knew what to look for. I documented everything. Then I wrote a question at the bottom of the page. When did she stop choosing me? Not out of anger. Out of curiosity. And the truth is, I don't think it happened in a single moment. Not with a kiss or a lie or a wrong turn. I think it happened slowly, like ink bleeding through paper. A decision stretched across 100 small actions. A series of compromises she made with herself, each one quieter than the last, until eventually I was on the outside of a story she'd started telling someone else. And here's the strange thing. I didn't feel betrayed in the way I thought I would. I wasn't broken. I wasn't hollowed out. I wasn't picturing her with him and wanting to scream into the void. Instead, I felt like someone who had been trapped in a room with the lights dimmed, finally stepping outside and blinking into daylight. There's a lie people tell you about betrayal, that it devastates you, that it crushes your sense of self. And sometimes, sure, it does. But other times, clarifies you, it sharpens your edges, it wakes you up. And that's what happened to me. For the first time in years, I saw myself clearly. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't insecure. I wasn't difficult or distant or demanding. I was observant. I paid attention. I noticed the lipstick that didn't match hers on a napkin in her purse. The hotel toiletries in the guest bathroom that she said were samples from work. The way she wore heels on Wednesdays but came home with sneakers in her bag. The way she laughed a little too hard when she showed me a video of Leo tripping over a light stand. The way she used to say, "Let me prove it to you," but stopped saying that months ago. All of it pointed to one thing. She had already left. Not physically, not publicly, but emotionally, quietly, without ceremony. And the cruelest part? She let me stay behind while she went. That afternoon, I walked to a small diner down the street, ordered pancakes, watched a couple in the booth across from me argue about how much syrup was too much. I don't know why, but it made me smile. Felt real. Honest. Two people navigating each other's weird habits. That used to be us. Once. When I got back to the rental, I opened my email and created a folder titled Next Steps. Inside it, I started saving things. Bank records, insurance policies, a scan of the prenup, photos hers, mine, ours, the one from the terrace. *TS of texts I'd quietly backed up from her cloud account. A copy of the tracker app logs. I didn't do it to build a case. I did it because I wanted to move on without ever needing to look back. I wanted everything in one place so I could burn it when I was ready. Around sunset, she called. Her name lit up my screen. I didn't answer. She didn't leave a voicemail. A minute later, she texted, "Hey, just checking in. Are you okay?" I didn't reply. She texted again, this time with more urgency. "Where are you? I came home and your stuff was gone. Can we talk?" I let the screen dim. 15 minutes later. "I'm worried. Please, just let me know you're safe." Safe? The irony made me laugh. Not a mean laugh. Just tired. Because I was safe. For the first time in a long time, I was safe from the manipulation, the performance, the quiet rewriting of reality that had been happening around me every day. She was worried not for me, but for the consequences of me no longer being in my designated role. That night, I slept for 9 hours straight. No dreams. No tossing. No checking the clock at 3 a.m. Because the person beside me was still awake, texting someone she called just a colleague. When I woke up, I made coffee and opened the notebook again. I wrote, "Leaving doesn't always look like a slammed door. Sometimes it looks like peace, stillness, breathing differently in a room that isn't filled with second-guessing." She didn't kick me out. I walked out, on my terms, and I'm not lost. I'm found. Then I closed the notebook, set it aside, and opened the curtains. A new day, a clear sky, the first one in a long time that didn't feel heavy. I returned a few days later, not to stay but to see. The house looked perfect. Too perfect. Clean floors, folded laundry, candles burning in every room. Jenna greeted me in an apron, flour on her hands, like we were in some commercial for second chances. She didn't ask where I'd been, didn't ask why I left, just smiled and said, "I missed you." But the warmth wasn't real. It was choreography, a performance meant to disarm, not reconnect. Even her hugs felt rehearsed. She didn't know I'd already left for good. I walked through the house like a stranger, inspecting a museum built around a life that no longer fit. Everything had been arranged to fix an image, but not to fix us. She knew I knew, and now she was trying to win back the story, not the man. The next morning I packed again. Quietly, she watched from the doorway but said nothing. No tears, no arguments, just silence. Maybe she finally understood. I wasn't leaving in anger. I wasn't punishing her. I was reclaiming myself. This wasn't escape, it was return. A week later, I was across the lake, in a house with wood floors and a view of the water. No shared memories, no echoes of her laughter. I deleted our photos, closed the notebook, and let it all fall away. She hadn't beaten me. She'd freed me, because what I found in the silence she left behind was something she never gave me: peace.